Old Chinese is often reconstructed as being a toneless language, with syllable final segments called postcodas, which diachronically cause tonal contours before disappearing, resulting in the contrastive tone we see in Middle and Modern Chinese. However, as the written record of Chinese is logographic, it is difficult to pinpoint the exact time that tonogenesis occurred. While rhyming categories can be reconstructed from poetry, evidence for the presence or absence of postcodas in a given text is sparse. Funko and Ryan in 2015 argues that high-ranking phonological constraints cause marked word order. Scher and Giroff, 2017, demonstrates that violations of the obligatory contour principle, or OCP, are avoided through variation in noun-adjective word order in Tagalog. The presence of postcoda segments at word boundaries in a given Chinese text would affect crossword OCP violations. If crossword OCP avoidance causes word order variation, as it does in other languages, then a given text should reflect the presence or absence of postcodas through the frequency of OCP violations. A text written when postcodas were present should avoid bigrams which have a postcoda followed by a featurally similar initial segment, while a text written after tonogenesis occurred would not, instead avoiding similar coda initial clusters regardless of what the original intervening postcoda was. In this study, I look at 5 classical Chinese texts, 2 of which are compilations of poetry. The study assumes that one of 3 hypotheses is true. The atonal hypothesis assumes that postcodas are present in the text and affect OCP violations. The non-glottal hypothesis assumes the same, with the addendum that glottal stop postcodas are transparent to OCP effects. And the tonal hypothesis assumes that tonogenesis has occurred and postcodas are not present, thus not influencing OCP violations. For bigrams which lack an intervening postcoda segment, this study finds that crossword OCP violations are significantly higher than predicted through randomization for poetry, suggesting that variation in word order is affected by OCP violations in poetic classical Chinese. When considering bigrams which would have an intervening postcoda segment before tonogenesis, OCP effects in poetry are significant when assuming the presence of postcodas, but are borderline when assuming their absence. Postcodas come in 2 flavors, as S and glottal stop, and could co-occur with nasal and glide codas. The glottal stop postcoda caused a rising tone in its syllable, while the S postcoda led to a falling tone. These postcodas later underwent elision, and the resulting rising and falling tone syllables were distinguishable from their level tone counterparts by tone alone, as can be seen in 8, where through tonogenesis the words ren, ninth, and ren, pregnant, form a minimal pair with level tone in the former and falling tone in the latter. The elision of postcodas would cause different bigrams to violate OCP constraints. 9 shows that the bigram fang xin forms a pseudo-geminate when postcodas are present, but does not when they are absent, and vice versa for the bigram fang yue. When deciding between candidates, a high-ranking OCP constraint may cause the speaker to use non-canonical word order or word choice, as shown in 10 and 11. The difference in pressures across pre- and post-tonogenesis Chinese would result in different surface realizations and different bigram distributions. To find these OCP violations in the corpus, I used Zheng Zhang 2003's reconstruction. Because glide codas are difficult to distinguish from vowels, they are considered non-codas for the purpose of the study. As shown in 12, a character may correspond to multiple initials or codas and postcodas. Bigram types are found as the unique combination of first character coda readings and second character initial readings. Expected frequency of a given bigram type in a text is calculated as the frequency of a given coda type multiplied by the frequency of a given initial type. Initials and codas are grouped by place and manner of articulation. Given bigrams whose first word coda or second word initial belong to multiple groups are excluded from the study. Which group a coda belongs to depends on the hypothesis that we follow, with postcodas having varying transparency across hypotheses. Because they lack postcoda segments in Old Chinese, Ping and Ru tones are the same across all hypotheses. For an initial test, bigrams which had shang or chu tone readings for their first characters are ignored. Chi-square tests were performed on each book. These tests found that crossword OCP violations occurred significantly less often than predicted in the 2 poetry books, as well as the commentary of Zuo or Zuo Zhuan, the largest prose text. In addition, the Classic of Mountain and Seas, or Shanhai Jing, had contradicting borderline results suggesting the opposite, that OCP violations were sought out. This can be seen in the first bar of each group in the figure below, where the dot represents the expected rate as given through randomization. When testing for all bigrams, including those with shang or chu first character readings, the poetry and Zuo Zhuan show significant crossword OCP effects for all hypotheses. The Zhu results are borderline for poetry under the tonal hypothesis. This hints that postcoda segments were present as late as the texts were written. For parts of the Songs of the South, according to Ci and Hawks, this would be as late as the Han Dynasty, circa 200 BCE to 200 CE.